I was 14 years old. It was an average night, nothing unusual. It was around 9 p.m. and I was at my little cousin's house, babysitting for the night. My mum and aunt had gone shopping, while my dad and uncle were at the movie theatre. So it was just me and my little cousin. We were sitting there watching TV when I started feeling strange. I couldn't explain it. Something just felt wrong. I couldn't put my finger on what it was, but the feeling wouldn't go away. I tried to ignore it and continued watching TV with my cousin. Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore, so I got up and walked into the kitchen to lock the back door, and that's when I saw him. I came back through the kitchen, and standing outside the window was a man. He looked decrepit, homeless, dishevelled, and he was just standing there staring through the window, staring directly at my little cousin. That was all it took. My protective instincts immediately kicked in. I pretended that I hadn't seen him. I didn't want to scare my cousin. Instead, I calmly told him that we needed to go upstairs because our parents would be home soon, and they wouldn't want him staying up late. So I took him upstairs and I put him to bed, and made sure he stayed there, because I knew damn well there was a man outside, and he wanted to get inside. At the time, I was about 125 pounds and about 5'8". I played football for my school, but none of that mattered, because I was 14, and there was a stranger outside watching my little cousin through the window. So I went back downstairs, straight into the kitchen. I grabbed one of those meat tenderising hammers. It wasn't much, but it was the only thing I could think of. I turned back toward the window. The man was gone. My heart started pounding. I ran to the front door, checked the lock. The deadbolt was locked. The doorknob was locked too. Everything was secure. At least, I thought it was. I ran back upstairs with the meat tenderizer still in my hand. I went into my cousin's bedroom and sat down directly in front of the door. My cousin looked at me. He asked what I was doing. I told him not to worry about it. Then I told him to keep his head low. I called the police, then I called my dad and uncle. The police told me they would be there in about half an hour. My dad and uncle were around 45 minutes away, so I just waited. Sitting there, holding that meat tenderizer, trying to keep my cousin calm. Then suddenly, I heard it, a crash. A window shattered downstairs. My entire body froze. Then I heard something even worse. Heavy boots, walking around on the main floor. He was inside. I told my cousin to stay calm. I told him to get under the covers and not make a sound. I could hear the man walking around downstairs. Every step echoed through the house. Slowly, deliberately. I gripped that damn meat tenderizer as tightly as I could. I just waited. 5 minutes passed. Then I heard the boots coming toward the stairs. My heart was pounding so hard, I thought I was going to have a heart attack. My cousin's bedroom was no more than 10 feet away from the stairs. There was almost nowhere to hide. Then I heard the man reach the top of the stairs. He started opening doors. First, my aunt and uncle's bedroom. Then, the bathroom. I sat there completely still, waiting for him to open our door. But he didn't. Instead, I heard the footsteps disappear. He walked back downstairs. Then I heard something else. The basement door opening. And then there was silence. 15 minutes later, the police had finally arrived. They burst into the house. I remember the feeling of relief, knowing that someone was finally there. They searched the entire house and eventually they found the man. It turned out he had escaped from a mental hospital, one province away. To this day, I still think about that night. Because if I hadn't have gotten the strange feeling, if I hadn't walked into the kitchen, I might never have seen him standing there. And if I hadn't seen him, I don't know what could have happened to my little cousin. I was only 14 years old, but that night, I learned that sometimes your instincts know something is wrong before your mind does. Sorry if this is kind of long, and sorry for any errors. I'm writing this on a mobile. I can't remember if I've posted this story somewhere else before, but this happened when I was 7 years old. My older sibling and I were staying home alone. We lived in a small town in Ohio. It was the kind of town where there were so few people that everyone seemed to know everyone. In fact, there were fewer people living in our town than there were students in my mum's graduating class from the city we'd originally come from. Our grandparents lived just down the street, and on their property was a small house they'd built for our great-grandmother. It allowed her to live independently while still having family close by. That day, my grandparents were out of town, so my parents told us they were going to check in on my great-grandmother. After that, they'd come home and we'd order pizza. To a 7-year-old, that sounded like a pretty good evening. My older sibling was around 14 or 15 at the time. They were grounded. The reason was something silly and arbitrary, although I can't remember exactly what it was. The phone had been taken away and so had the house phone. Both were locked inside my dad's gun safe. Neither of us knew the combination, so there was no way for us to contact our parents if we needed them. At first, none of that seemed important. We played video games, we laughed, we waited, and eventually we started getting hungry. My parents had been gone for about 2 hours. We were starting to wonder when they'd be back. Then I heard a knock at the front door. I remember getting excited. I thought my parents were finally home. Maybe they'd brought the pizza. I went downstairs. My sibling followed a little behind me, after saving the game, that is. We walked toward the front door. There was a large window in the door, so I could see whoever was standing outside. I looked through it and immediately knew it wasn't my parents. Standing outside was a man. He was very tall, lean, white. He had short black hair, scruffy facial hair. I would have guessed he was around 24 or 25. But what really bothered me was that I didn't recognise him. In our town, everyone knew everyone, and I'd never seen this man before. I raised one finger toward the window, almost like I was saying, 1 second. Then I closed the curtain. I turned round. My sibling was staring at the door. They'd seen him too, and they looked just as confused as I was. Then everything changed. The knocking stopped and became pounding, hard pounding. Then the entire door started shaking. The doorknob rattled violently. He was trying to get inside. I remember being terrified. We had no way of calling our parents, no phone, no way to reach anyone. My sibling grabbed my hand and ran. They pulled me into the kitchen and grabbed a knife. I distinctly remember the knife breaking in their hand. They immediately grabbed another one. Then they took me into the laundry room. We hid there together, holding onto each other, trying not to make a sound. Outside, the banging continued, pounding, shaking. The sound of the door being tested again and again. 5 minutes had passed. But when you're 7 years old and hiding from someone you think is trying to get into your house, 5 minutes feels like hours. My siblings stayed between me and the door. They'd always been like that. Even now, I remember how protective they were. They were ready to defend me, even with a pathetic kitchen knife. Then, we heard something that made our hearts stop. The front door had opened. Someone had gotten inside. My sibling tensed. They were ready to jump up and protect me the moment the man came round the corner. But then my mum appeared. She rounded the corner carrying 2 pizza boxes, and she stopped. She looked at both of us. We were a crumpled heap of tears on the laundry room's floor. She had absolutely no idea what was happening. We jumped up and immediately started talking. We told her about the man, the knocking, the pounding, the shaking doorknob, the fact that we thought someone had been trying to get inside. And then, our parents laughed. My dad was outside talking to the man. Apparently the stranger had been asking about a broken down car that had been sitting in our driveway for several months. He was apparently a mechanic. He wanted to ask about buying it. My mum felt terrible, but she also found the whole situation somewhat amusing. Apparently, she went outside and explained to the man that he'd scared us. He apologised. He said he felt bad for frightening us. Everything seemed to be explained. We were safe, our parents were home, and there was nothing more to worry about. They hugged us and promised that our phones would never be locked away while they were gone again. Then we spent the rest of the evening eating pizza, still crying, still shaken, but eventually the night ended. And as a child, I didn't think much more about it. I believed the explanation. There was a man. He wanted to buy a car. He scared us. My parents came home. End of story. Except, now I'm an adult. And there's something about that night that bothers me. Something I never thought about as a child. Why? Well, why would a grown man pound on the front door like that? Why would he shake the doorknob? Why would he try so desperately to get inside a house after a child had clearly acknowledged him and held up a finger as if to say, 1 second? If he really just wanted to ask about a car, why didn't he simply wait? Why didn't he leave a note? Why didn't he come back during the day? And why was he trying so hard to get inside a house where he had no idea who was home? The car didn't have a for sale sign on it. It simply had been sitting in our driveway for months. And this was around 9 or 10 at night. Looking back now, that doesn't feel normal. That's not how I think most adults would behave. And that's the part that I can't get out of my head. Maybe my parents were right. Maybe he was really just an innocent mechanic who wanted to ask about a broken down car. Maybe he genuinely didn't realise how terrifying his behaviour looked from the inside of the house. Maybe there was nothing more to it. But there's another possibility, and that's the one that really scares me. What if my parents hadn't come home when they did? What if we'd been alone for another hour? What if the door hadn't held? What if that man actually gotten inside? I don't know what would have happened, and honestly, I don't think I want to know. Because looking back on that night as an adult, my gut tells me something wasn't right. And sometimes your instincts remember things that your childhood mind was too young to understand or comprehend. Thank you for listening. If you enjoy deep dives into dark truths and untold stories, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment below. It helps the channel more than you know. We release new videos every Sunday and Thursday between 6 and 8 p.m. BST. Until next time, remember, the deepest scars are often invisible, but survival is its own kind of strength.